America's most intensely regional sport may be spoken in the soft drawl of South Georgia, or the nasal twang of western North Carolina, or the backwater brogue of South Carolina. But wherever you place the accent, you must place it below the Mason-Dixon line. In its entire racing schedule, stock car racing ventures out of the Southeast to visit only 4 locations. But those are just vacation trips. Stock car racing makes its home in the South because it was born there nearly 40 years ago. And even before there were races, there were races. Legend has it that men like Junior Johnson and Buck Baker made money driving false-bottom cars filled with moonshine whiskey on dark backwoods roads in the mountains of North Carolina and Tennessee. When they emerged onto dirt tracks to race with Lee Petty and Fireball Roberts, they were participating in the development of what now ranks as one of the region's 3 major sports. Only college football, mostly south and west of the Georgia line, and college basketball, mostly north and east of the Peach State, have provided real competition. Pro football, regarded by some as the nation's favorite sport, is no match for stock car racing in the marketplace. As Atlanta proved on November 3 of last year, the Falcons and the Redskins drew a crowd of about 40,000. A few miles away, nearly 70,000 bought tickets to see the Atlanta Journal 500. It isn't just the danger, though certainly that's part of the appeal. It's that Southerners are uniquely attracted to heated competition among men who are among the coolest customers in sport. And as long as that's the case, sports like baseball and football will be the meat and potatoes at the American spectator's buffet. But stock car racing, by tradition and by choice, is the grist. ABC Sports presents from the Atlanta International Raceway, just south of the big city, one of the premier stock car racing events of the year, the Atlanta 500. This ABC Sports exclusive is being brought to you by Radio Shack, the computer experts, by Chevrolet, who invite you to drive today's Chevy, live today's Chevy, and by Goodyear. You either have Goodyear Eagles or you need them. This is the Atlanta International Raceway, actually located some 20-odd miles south in Hampton, Georgia, where today the commercial and cultural capital of the New South makes one of its 2 super speedway appearances of the year-long stock car racing schedule. The Atlanta 500 follows by exactly 1 month the Daytona 500, the race which set the tone for a season which is so far extremely unpredictable. And this race could offer some definition to the picture of a big money sport where a lot seems to be up for grabs right now. Today, prize money of almost $500,000 available to the 42 drivers who will start this 328-lap 500-mile race. It rained for much of the latter part of this week, knocking out a lot of practice time, but today there is only a 30% chance of rain. Hello, I'm Jim Lampley. For the next 4.5 hours, the Atlanta 500 will be coming to you live via ABC Sports. You've probably noticed that the cars have just begun their pace laps on the track. This is a race which should materially advance 2 ongoing stories in the sport. Number 1, the effort of Bill Elliott, 30-year-old driver from nearby Dawsonville, Georgia, to live up to the incredible expectations he created with his dominant performance a year ago, particularly early in the 1985 season. 2, the resurgence of General Motors cars, which made significant design changes to get back into the race with Bill Elliott's Ford. And here to call the race with me is our motor racing expert, Sam Posey. Sam, we start to look for competitive edges here at Atlanta. I think you have to start with the design and configuration of the track.
Yeah, which is unusual in that it has such long turns. Any driver who's ever driven this place will tell you that when you get into the turns, they seem to go on and on, almost forever. Then you get a tiny little burst on the straightaway, and you're back into another turn. So even though the lap speed here is only about 170 miles an hour, which is much less than the 205-mile-an-hour speeds at Daytona, say, this is known as a driver's track and a real challenge. Now, you know, you spoke a moment ago, the rules changes over the winter, which allowed the General Motors bodied cars to improve their aerodynamics for this season. And frankly, if qualifying here is any indication of the results, the first 4 rows, the first 4 cars, the fastest cars, are General Motors cars. It looks to me as if Ford's salad days may very well be over. It's hard to pick a favorite in a race which is going to run 500 miles because the odds against any single individual are so great. But if you would pick one of those General Motors people, Dale Earnhardt. He has the pole here. He almost won Daytona a month ago. He was within an ace of getting it to happen when he ran out of gas, and he's won this race twice before. So he is a heavy favorite in my mind.
All right, Sam, let's look quickly at the grid. You mentioned Earnhardt on the pole, recently disciplined by NASCAR for having judged to have forced a decisive crash toward the end of a race in Richmond with Darrell Waltrip. Next to him on the outside of row 1, Tim Richmond, second race in a row, a big early qualifying effort, and then bumped from the pole. On the inside of row 2, Morgan Shepherd in a car overseen by a master wrench named Jake Elder. Outside of him, number 10, Greg Sachs, winner of the Firecracker 400 in Daytona last July. Row 3, Bill Elliott on the inside, super speedway records in every category a year ago. Outside, the KG veteran Cale Yarborough likes this track. His handling skills could be a decisive advantage here today. Row 4, Rusty Wallace on the inside from the newest generation of stock car contenders. Outside of him, Jeff Bodine, both General Motors cars, and Bodine the winner a month ago, of course, of the Daytona 500, the first big race of this 1986 season. Row 5, Sterling Marlin on the inside says his car ran faster than Earnhardt's in testing a week ago. And outside of him, Harry Gant in a good ride furnished by Hollywood residents Burt Reynolds and Hal Needham. Row 6, Richard Petty, the king, is winless since July 4, 1984 in Daytona Beach. And outside of him, Terry Labonte won the most recent race on the circuit, a 500-miler in Rockingham, North Carolina, on March 2. Rows 7 through 9, 4 of the greatest names in the sport are there. Buddy Baker, Darrell Waltrip, Benny Parsons, Bobby Allison. Rows 10 through 12, Neil Bonnet on the inside of 10 could make it to the lead from there. A.J. Foyt won this race in 1971. Rows 13 through 15, inside row 13, Ron Bouchard is a coming talent. Pancho Carter on row 15, same man who sat on the pole at the Indy 500 last May. 16 through 18, Darrell Waltrip's brother Michael heads up row 16 on the inside, and rows 19 through 21, you see Kyle Petty, another stock car prince, got his long-awaited first win a few weeks ago at Richmond, but qualified number 38 here. And now they're getting very close to race time, Sam Posey, as we see them creeping around in formation on this last pace lap.
Jim, you see them as they come out of turn 2, going down that extremely short backstretch that I mentioned. In fact, the track doesn't even really flatten out there. It still stays a little bit banked. The bank's here 24 degrees. They're headed into the third turn now, just about half a mile ahead of them before the start begins. This is our camera car inside, it's called the race cam, inside the car of Cale Yarborough, and that is the view that he sees out of his car. He looks back and he sees Jeff Bodine, who also has one of our race cams in his car. He is looking forward and sees Cale in that car on the upper right of your screen. So obviously we're looking forward to the images that we'll get from there. They're coming to take the start, Jim, at about 70 miles an hour. That's the pace that they set here coming down to the start.
Okay, so our two race cams, as you saw, in the car of Cale Yarborough and Jeff Bodine. And now they take the green flag to begin the first lap of this 500-mile race, and going to the lead on the outside of row number 1 for the moment is Tim Richmond, now surrendering it temporarily to the man on the inside, number 3, Dale Earnhardt. They go down the back stretch the first time by the back grandstand. It is Richmond still with about a half car length lead, and now there goes Earnhardt on the inside of him. Dale Earnhardt has been the center of controversy in stock car racing circles in recent weeks. There is nothing that the man from Kannapolis, North Carolina would like better than to win here today. And as they finish the first lap, Earnhardt has taken a healthy lead as he begins to pull away. Clearly, Sam Posey, the quickest car in qualifying and in trials here a week ago when many of the drivers were here to test, although there are a couple of drivers who say that they think they can keep up with Earnhardt.
Exactly so, and one of those is sitting right now in second place, Morgan Shepherd, in the car right behind Dale Earnhardt. You see him there, number 47, that's Morgan Shepherd, and a great start by Bill Elliott, who you see coming into the picture now in third. Bill Elliott, who won both of the races held here last year, and who has not been able to win so far this year in 4 races, is showing more speed, Jim, than he has showed at any time so far this year.
They go down the backstretch again, and the leader remains Earnhardt. Morgan Shepherd there, also in the yellow and white car. The red number 9, that is Bill Elliott in third place. Those 3 cars pulling just a little bit ahead of the rest of the field. Tim Richmond, who was starting on the outside of row number 1, has now dropped back into 4th place. And here they come down the front straight to pass the front grandstand one more time.
Earnhardt's superiority derives from having a car that seems to handle better very low around the racetrack. In other words, he's able to keep it what they call pinched down, very low. He takes literally a little bit shorter route around the track, and it's been very, very effective for him. It's as if their chassis has been set up all year. Despite all the changes that go on from race to race, their chassis has seemed to have an edge at each track. There, of course, is Cale Yarborough running right behind Greg Sachs. A little bit back in the pack, you see the race cam, and Greg Sachs right ahead of him there. Sachs, who won the Firecracker 400 last year in Daytona, the race that we were at.
Yarborough at this moment is running in 6th place. If you take a look at Cale at the office inside the roll cage, which constitutes the support system in his car, number 28. That is Sachs just in front of him, and there the 4 leaders farther up through his windshield. You can see Richmond and the 3 men in front of him, Elliott, Shepard, and the leader Dale Earnhardt. Now there goes Cale Yarborough on the inside, apparently making a move for the moment past Greg Sachs, and then letting Sachs go back by on the outside of the track.
Well, yes, but Cale, this is going into turn 1, and he's positioned where he wants to be, and you saw Sachs suddenly fade back out of the picture. In fact, Sachs, by being forced to go so wide, left a gap that another car drove right into. So that worked out very, very well for Cale Yarborough.
We are on lap 5 of 328 laps in this 500-mile race, the Atlanta 500. Dale Earnhardt is the leader, well ahead for the moment of Morgan Shepherd at this early juncture in the race. 3rd place belongs to Bill Elliott. Tim Richmond still holding on to 4th place. Dale Earnhardt, 33 years old, from Kannapolis, North Carolina, had his best year perhaps in 1984 with 14 top 10 finishes, but he won this race back in 1980, the year in which he won the points championship for Grand National Stock Car Racing. Relatively brief career, he is already 6th on the all-time earnings list, and he is known as a Charger.
He's also known as an extremely tough man.
Dale Earnhardt, the leader for now, and we'll be back right after this. We are back at the Atlanta International Raceway, where, as you can see by the lap statistics, we are just getting started in a long haul. Dale Earnhardt still the leader, and the standings remain pretty much as they were when we went away. There is a look at the lead car, Earnhardt, who is building just a little bit of a working margin right now as you watch him go down the backstretch and into turn number 3. Shepard is on the right side of the screen, trailed by Bill Elliott.
Elliott, as I said, is having his best performance so far of the year. Encouraging for him, this is what you would call a home track. You see Elliott just on the right of your screen now, car number 9. He lives a little way up the road in a small town called Dawsonville, Georgia, and you can be sure that there are a number of people, probably in the hundreds here, rooting for him. Right on the tail of Morgan Shepherd there.
There is much to prove for Bill Elliott, who was so dominant a year ago. 11 pole positions in super speedway races, 11 super speedway wins, tying a record. Particularly in the early part of the season, he was totally dominant. Everybody looks at the front of the pack in a race like this, but there is a continuing story going on at the back of the pack. That is the car, number 18, Tommy Ellis, who qualified 17th originally for this race Friday, but then when later found by NASCAR to have had an inoperative fan and alternator on his car, something which boosts the horsepower, was busted back, in effect, to 42nd position and forced to start at the very end of the field today. Already, Sam Posey, he has passed 14 cars in the race. And here's a look at how Tommy Ellis has been going through traffic.
This is just before the start, I believe, Jim, and as you see, he's already positioning himself to take probably a higher line than the other cars are going to. You'll find more running room up there where the slower cars that he's passing will not be able to operate as successfully as he. He's already by 4 cars right there at the start. In many ways, you know, it's a delight, frankly, to start at the back because you get to knock off so many people right away that you may overcome the disadvantage of the tactical bad position by feeling racy. Look at the drivers he'll be able to quickly overwhelm as he moves his way up through the pack. It's kind of fun when you're forced into that situation.
Ellis claimed after the penalty was levied against him that he had in effect been penalized for mechanical failure, that the The pump, which operates the fan and connects to the alternator, had malfunctioned during the course of his qualifying. NASCAR said, we don't care how, we just know that you got extra horsepower. And there is Ellis right now in car number 18 as he continues to move up through the field after starting in 42nd and last position. That is A.J. Foyt on the left side of the screen, and right now you are watching Ellis clearly with more power, Sam, going to the inside of the track and easily by Foyt.
Better handling in any case. He ran down low. We're now back to the front. This is Dale Earnhardt leading up front, but Ellis will keep our eye on him, although I suspect he will sort of stall out around 9th or 10th place.
The leader remains Dale Earnhardt in car number 3. Morgan Shepherd behind him in car number 47. Just behind Shepherd is Bill Elliott. It is still Tim Richmond in 4th place, and they string out from there.
At this stage of the race, how important is speed? How important is jockeying for position? You've got almost 500 miles to go. Well, obviously, the track here is only 1.5 miles long. You don't want to get a lap back of the leader, and at this rate, Earnhardt, although by the first fuel stops at about the 100-mile mark, would not be a lap ahead of the 2nd and 3rd place men. He might easily be a lap ahead of people running as high as 10th. So speed is important. People are not laying back by any stretch of the imagination. You see the case in point. He's already put one of the competitors a lap down.
And we mentioned earlier that Earnhardt is known as a charger. It's particularly germane in the wake of his crash with Waltrip at Richmond recently. Here's what Earnhardt said to us earlier this week about his aggressive driving nature.
Well, I thought that's what, you know, anytime you was a competitor, you're supposed to be aggressive to a point, whether it be football, basketball, or what. If you're going to be good in any sport, you're going to have to go out and go for it. And sometimes you get on the ragged edge, sometimes you make mistakes. Well, I made a mistake, and we come to Atlanta, it's going to be the same thing here. I'm going to have to go out there and race and do everything I can do to go out and win and get aggressive some. But as far as going out and wrecking somebody intentionally or trying to hurt somebody or trying to put somebody out of a race, that's not my style. That's not what I'm out there to try to do.
At some point during the course of the day, we hope to offer you a look at what happened in Richmond, and there is still discussion among all of the racers on this circuit about the confrontation, or supposed confrontation, between Dale Earnhardt and Darrell Waltrip at Richmond.
Well, we look forward to seeing that. But the battle for second has really heated up, with Elliott well positioned now inside of Morgan Shepherd and Tim Richmond, who started on the front row, coming right up. So there's a three-way battle for second, with Elliott positioned better than any of the other cars. It's a little bit of a chess game. You give a little bit away on one turn in order to be better positioned on another. Elliott has been waiting to make the move he's making now for about 3 laps. But you see, he's got Morgan Shepherd now on the outside of him, and Elliott should be able to play the trump card of being down low to get by. Now, I raise a question now about how well Elliott's car is handling, because if that was Earnhardt's car there, he'd be by Morgan Shepherd and gone. And as you can see, Tim Richmond's having no trouble staying with him.
Well, here in 3-car form, Sam, is the very confrontation everyone's been talking about between a Ford car and 2 General Motors cars. Morgan Shepherd's car, number 47, is a Buick. Tim Richmond's car, which is the 3rd car in that duel right there, is, of course, a Chevrolet. And Ford is Elliott's car, number 9, on the inside of the track. So dominant the first half of the season a year ago. This year, apparently struggling to find its footing in the early going.
Well, it really is. And incidentally, as we say Ford and Chevrolet, understand they are not really Fords and Chevrolets as you buy them in the showroom, you know, and just come out here and tune them up and race them. They are pure racing cars. The chassis, the suspension, the brakes, everything is made purely for racing. And then a body that closely resembles a Ford or a Chevrolet is put over that chassis. So we're using the term Ford and Chevrolet very loosely here, and I hope everybody understands that. But there are subtle aerodynamic differences between the Ford bodies and the Chevrolet and Pontiac General Motors bodies, and they often tell the story. Elliott has prevailed here, Jim, but it is nothing like the strength that he was able to show last year. In a confrontation like that last year, he would have been like a prize fighter with his gloves off. You know, he would have punched those guys out and been gone. And here, he was barely able to eke away from them.
Thus far, there have been no yellow caution flags in the race, so the cars have been running full out, just as their mechanics would want them to be going ever since the start of the race. The fuel tank limit for a stock car of this sort is about 100 miles. So if we don't see any caution flags, we can expect the beginning of pit stops after about 100 miles. There are 42 pits to cover. We have our two most athletic ABC sportscasters here to cover them, Tim Brandt and Al Trautwig. And quickly now, let's go down for an update from Tim Brandt.
Jim, you and Sam have been talking about how these cars are basically race cars in the suspension parts. The body, of course, the stock part is just like you buy from the Detroit manufacturers. One very, very big difference, of course, is in these tires. Every tire has a different circumference, and that is extremely important, especially on a track like this, where they are half-mile turns, and it seems as if you are turning the entire time. It gives you an impression. You put the smaller tires down like this cup on the inside, the bigger tires out on the outside, and it'll roll like this into those turns. It keeps these cars turning on this type of track, where it is a half-mile turn on each end, and the straightaway is just a quarter of a mile long.
There is Dale Earnhardt, who is turning around this Atlanta track faster than any of his 41 competitors right now. Earnhardt still in the lead. We'll be back to the Atlanta 500. Almost 50 miles into the Atlanta 500, there is a look at the man who is picking his way through back-of-the-pack traffic and currently holding on to the lead, as he has since leaving the pole position at the start of the race. Number 3, Dale Earnhardt in command. Bill Elliott has taken over second place ahead of Morgan Shepherd, who leads. Tim Richmond, Harry Gant, Cale Yarborough, and Rusty Wallace. His qualifying speed here for Earnhardt was just over 170 miles per hour, almost 171 miles an hour. That is on a lap of 32.1 seconds, roughly. We're going to take a look now at a full lap for Earnhardt. Obviously, they will not be turning quite as fast as in qualifying at this point, Sam Posey, but anything between 32 and 33 seconds is a very fast lap here at Atlanta.
Well, exactly. Imagine that the lap he's turning now is about in the high 160s range. In the turns, he'll only be going about 160. On the straight, he'll probably go about 180. That's roughly the speed range.
34.1, so you can see they have slowed considerably since qualifying day Friday as they begin to pace themselves for the 500-mile-per-hour haul. 34.1 is just a little bit around 164, 165 miles per hour for Earnhardt at this moment. And right now, let's go down to our other pit reporter, Al Trautwig. Al?
Jim, Sam Posey perhaps said that Bill Elliott was having some handling problems. Here's Ernie Elliott. Ernie, has Bill said anything to you about handling problems with the car?
No, it's just too early to tell. You know, right now you just kind of ride out. You got to start the race on the tires you qualified on. So right now, you know, you just kind of riding everything out. You know, feeling the car out, seeing if that's a good setup to run all day. You know, checking to make sure the racetrack makes any changes or anything like that. Right now, it's just too early.
Okay, thank you, Ernie. By the way, Bill Elliott's crew has more tires than any other pit. 34 tires are here, getting ready to be placed on that number 9 if they need to throughout the day. Back to you, Jim.
All right, thanks, Al, and that brings up an interesting point. If Earnhardt or any other of the early leaders are able to isolate at this point in the race, Sam Posey, a set of tires that they really like, they may put them aside and save them for the late push.
Well, exactly, because they know that the car is handling right with that set of tires on, and it's just like Tim Brandt showed us with the stagger, the rolling the little cup around. If you get the tires that you want, you put them aside before they're too worn down, and then you use them later when it really counts.
There's a good look at Jeff Bodine, 36 years old from Chemung, New York, driving a Chevrolet in which he won the Daytona 500 at the start of this season. Many believe that this could be the year when Bodine, who has improved markedly in each year since he joined the circuit, could really explode in the way that Elliott did a year ago. And there is a look inside the car as Jeff Bodine continues his day at work in the Atlanta 500.
You get some idea of the steepness of the banks, 24 degrees. You see now, Jeff Bodine, incidentally, innovated power steering. He brought power steering into NASCAR racing, so if he's making a little less physical effort than some of the others, that's part of the explanation. You see the netting beside his head there. That's so if he slams into the wall, his head won't come out of the car and hit the wall itself. If we pan across there, you can get some idea of the speed. The pit's rushing by on the inside. You pick up the car that, of course, he's concentrating on the most right at the moment, the car that is pursuing him. You always have to watch your rear view mirror because you don't want to get in anyone's way. You want to understand what's going on out there on the track.
Good look at what is going on from inside Jeff Bodine's car. When last I was able to check the standings correctly, Bodine was in 8th place, exactly the position in which he started the race. We've had a remarkably clean first 50 miles in this Atlanta 500. So far, I have seen only one car pull into the pits.
See the bars there? Well, we'll get back to that when we look next time from inside the car. We have resumed here with a look at what is now the battle for third. Morgan Shepherd, that's third, fourth, and fifth we're looking at.
The leaders remain Earnhardt in first place, Elliott in second place, and now Gant, Bouchard, and Richmond battling for third, fourth, and fifth. Harry Gant, Ron Bouchard, and Tim Richmond, two of the young bloods on the circuit in Bouchard and Richmond. And Harry Gant is a polished veteran who is almost always around at the finish.
Yes, he is. In fact, I'm surprised to see him run quite that well this early in the race. But, Jim, as you explained earlier, the early stage of this race is going to be a little unusual because there was so little practice due to the rain in the last few days. And so the way a car is handling now, there's no real indication of how it's going to handle later. As you well know, there's so many ways to adjust the car, the different tires that you put on it, to suspension changes that you can make, even aerodynamic changes that you can make as the race goes on. I was interested by what Ernie Elliott said when he dispelled my fear that perhaps Bill Elliott's car wasn't handling that well. Obviously, they know they've got a long race ahead of them. They're not dismayed that Bill's car didn't seem to have extreme bite. After all, they are running second, and a very clean second, too, which is the best they've been doing this year. So I think I underestimated the Bill Elliott potential a little bit.
Well, there is, of course, a modicum of driver skill involved in this, and Bill Elliott, regardless of what his mechanical situation may be early in this season, has proven, particularly last year, that he is an extraordinarily talented driver.
Well, I think that's where racing on this track here in Atlanta makes such a contrast with racing at Daytona, which many people saw a month ago. Here, it is all the turns. Look at it. It's exactly what we talked about. It's 1.5 miles around. Each of these long turns is half a mile. The straightaways are only 1/4 of a mile. So you better believe there's a lot of driving involved. In fact, you don't go into the turns flat out, as we watch Bill Elliott here. You have to brake a little bit as you go into the turn and then accelerate back up to speed. It's a very delicate operation the whole way. These are enormous cars. I mean, they weigh 3,700 pounds with no fuel and no driver aboard. So it's over 2 tons of car out there on really very narrow tires, say, compared to an Indianapolis car. It's a delicate game of balancing an elephant on what really feels when you're in one of the cars like little roller coasters underneath you.
Right now, Elliott is about 3½ seconds behind the leader, Dale Earnhardt. As you see there on the screen, we widen out to show you exactly what 3½ seconds mean. Earnhardt looks like he's a long way ahead as they go down the backstretch. The difference is actually just about 3½ seconds, and certainly to this early point in the race, that is the kind of working margin which indicates precisely what you said before the race, Sam Posey, that Earnhardt's car is the quickest and has seemed to be the best acclimatized to this track, given the limited practice time available to drivers here this week. It did rain most of Thursday and Friday, and that caused most of the drivers to miss substantial practice time. It means that those who are more familiar with the track, such as Bill Elliott, and of course a veteran like Dale Earnhardt, will have a bit of an advantage. Right now, Earnhardt clearly the quickest car and still well ahead in the lead.
Oh, he's whipping right around Ron Bouchard there, who ran very well at Daytona. Unusual to see Bouchard lap this early in the going. That's what I mean about how critical it is. If you get a lap down, yellow comment comes out, everybody bunches up, you are stuck a lap down. And so at the moment, Earnhardt's pace is making it very difficult, not for Elliott here, not for some of the other front runners, but guys back in 9th, 10th, and 11th.
One problem caused by the shortage of practice time, Sam, is that a lot of these teams are guessing on how to set the car up for the race. A couple of days ago, we asked Bill Elliott himself, if you guess wrong on setting up the car, how are you able to correct it during the course of the race?
That's a key to thing about it. You got to really work harder on the pit stops to try to you know, if I think it's going to be a cool day and I set the car up one way and it turns out to be a real hot day, or the track changes more than what I think it's going to change, because I've been to most of the places and I got a pretty good idea how the track's going to change. Then you're just always working all day long trying to get something back to where you can run halfway decent in the race. And a lot of times, sometimes you get it back, and then sometimes if one car is really running good, they can get you behind before you do catch up.
And for now, a persistent cloud cover is keeping the temperature here in the 60s, which amounts to a relatively cool day by stock car racing standards. So there is the leader, Dale Earnhardt, still well ahead of the man you just heard from, second place Bill Elliott, as their confrontation continues early in the Atlanta 500. We'll be at Atlanta International Raceway, still very early in the Atlanta 500, which follows by 1 month the first big stock car racing jewel of the season, the Daytona 500. This has appeared early to be a wide-open season, but there is a man who could establish dominance in this season, if indeed that is to be on the part of any one driver. Dale Earnhardt, who is currently in the lead ahead of last year's most dominant driver, Bill Elliott. Now let's go down for a report from Al Trautwig. Al?
Jim, of course, not much happening right now in the Dale Earnhardt pit, which is headed up by Kirk Shelmerdine. Kirk, how are things running in that number 3?
Everything's fine right now. We've got a long way to go.
Has Dale said anything about the way the car is performing yet?
I'm sorry, what's that?
Has Dale said anything to you about the way the car is performing?
No, he just said everything's okay. We're going to wait it out and see what the track is.
Okay, running in front, Dale Earnhardt. Back to you, Jim.
All right, thanks, Al. And we have already mentioned to you the confrontation between Earnhardt and Darrell Waltrip, which took place in a race at Richmond 3 weeks ago, occasioned a disciplinary measure on the part of NASCAR directed against Dale Earnhardt. Sam Posey, let's take a look at precisely what happened there.
It starts out, we hear what Darrell Waltrip had to say about the incident, and then we'll have a look at the incident.
I'm sorry it happened. I don't want to be involved in these kinds of things. And when you run up front and when you win a lot of races and when you're trying to win a race, you're going to be involved in controversies. If you run back in the pack, if somebody runs over you, who cares? But if you're trying to win the race and somebody runs over you, then obviously it creates a lot of attention. What happened at Rockingham is just a deal where I think Dale was trying to get a little bit of something to go in on Monday morning or Tuesday morning, whenever it was with. He didn't give me much room, and we did rub together, but it certainly wasn't like what happened at Richmond.
As we watch what happened, it's clear that Earnhardt hits Waltrip from behind, causing both cars to spin into the wall. Earnhardt, it would seem, is the villain, Waltrip, the innocent victim. But to fully understand the incident, realize that it's a time-honored technique to tap your opponent in the bumper, making him slide harmlessly out of the way as you duck through on the inside. Any driver worth his salt does this routinely, especially on the slower and therefore safer tracks such as this one. Where Earnhardt went wrong, and here we see it again, was in hitting Waltrip so hard that both cars went out of control. And surely this wasn't what he had in mind. So to me, it suggests that Waltrip was up to something himself, slowing early for the turn in an effort to throw off Earnhardt's timing.
Well, what happened up there was a mistake on my part. You know, we got fined for it. NASCAR says it was reckless intent. You know, I don't see it that way, and it's just an argument between us and NASCAR. You know, they rule on it, but yet they wouldn't rule on Darrell hitting us on the caution flag afterwards. So, you know, you got to take it. You signed up to join NASCAR and signed up Interblank to run that race, and you got to run under those rules. So they're the governing body. You got to take what they give you and go on.
Now, what is fascinating, Sam Posey, is to note that Earnhardt is doing for Darrell Waltrip to a certain degree what a fellow named John McEnroe once did for Jimmy Connors in tennis. Waltrip, though not having been accused of being reckless, has been called self-motivated, petulant, and has not always been popular among fans and other racers in this sport. Now suddenly he is more so.
Waltrip has really been working on his image over the last couple of years because he did come into this sport as sort of Tech's bad boy. There's no question about it. Very fast-mouthed, very intelligent kind of guy. We look again at Bill Elliott running second, and I think that now that Earnhardt has shown his true stripes, which is a very tough-minded guy who I happen, incidentally, to like enormously, he is taking some of the heat off Waltrip. Waltrip alluded to, or Earnhardt alluded to what happened right after that incident, by the way. Both cars were crumpled, and Waltrip, barely able to steer his, waited for the backstretch, took a shot, and demolished both of the cars. So it was a tit-for-tat thing, and he got even. We're going to have a look now at Darrell Waltrip, who is struggling at this point in the race. He's tried the high line, which you see him running here. He's tried the low line. He can't seem to satisfy himself at this stage. But as we said before, we heard Ernie Elliott say in the interview, it doesn't really matter critically. But 14th is very, very far back for Darrell Waltrip. The key thing is, will he be lapped before the first round of pit stops, which give him an opportunity to set his car up a little bit better.
First car out of the race, Bill Parsons, number 66, has been black flagged.
They are working on Parsons' car in the pits. The car appears to be mechanically sound, except that he ran over his air hose in a pit stop just before. It was an unscheduled stop. There he is. He's just leaving the pits now. There's a rule that when the air hoses are deployed out from the wall and across the track for the men changing the tires on the outside of the car, that you're not allowed to pull out of the pits until those air hoses have been folded back in. So Parsons penalized, but only a few seconds to hold in the pits. There's Dale Earnhardt leading.
Meanwhile, Sam, number 64, Dwayne Pancho Carter, last year's pole sitter at the Indianapolis 500, has gone to the garage. So we apparently will not be seeing Pancho anymore during the course of the day. And there's another look at 33-year-old Dale Earnhardt in a Chevrolet, regular on the circuit since 1979, won this race in 1980, 6 years ago. It was his first super speedway win.
Here comes A.J. Foyt into the pits. These are, I would start to say, scheduled stops at this point. Foyt's Oldsmobile-bodied car. A little fresh paint job for this year. A.J. is starting to take NASCAR racing more seriously. He knows that it's a tough road to hoe here, that he's up against champions who have highly skilled teams with an awful lot of money. A.J. is still dividing his energies. You see his crew maybe not, I don't know, we'll have to see from the time, but I would say maybe not as sharp as some of the NASCAR crews that we'll see. That is a little bit slow. We'll see the same things done, the outside tires change and refuel, in 3 to 4 seconds slower. So Foyt is still feeling his way in NASCAR.
Big upset, Sam, in the NCAA basketball tournament. Navy having knocked off Syracuse in the Carrier Dome in Syracuse. Navy, with their brilliant center, David Robinson, advances in the NCAA tournament, and Robinson, I am told, had 35 points today. There is Dale Earnhardt, and he is now slowing down and moving to the inside of the track.
He's in trouble. Even if he's not coming into the pits, he is out going down the back. He's coming around now. He may have stretched the fuel too long. It was problems with fuel that cost Earnhardt the Daytona 500. He may once again have tried to stretch it a little bit too far.
Remember that Earnhardt was in position to slingshot past Jeff Bodine and win the Daytona 500 when suddenly at the denouement of that race he ran out of gas. Here, just from the look of it, it may again be fuel problems for Earnhardt.
Yeah, but if so, he isn't going to pay too dearly, although he'll have lost the lead. All right, now they just performed the same thing exactly that Foyt's team did, but wait a minute. What is going on here? The entire crew, and you're only allowed 6 men over the wall. They must have had 8 or 9 getting it started. As at Daytona, Jim, he stalled the car coming in. Earnhardt seems to, I'm not in the car, and I don't know the circumstances, but he seems to have a habit of coming in so hot that he stalls it. Well, no. Obviously, in this case, he had run out of gas. That's why, and it was hard for them to get it started. I'm wrong.
I counted 9 men over the wall.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, counting the man on the near side.
Yeah.
That is a gang. And what did you say? The rule is 6.
Well, you're allowed 6. But what happens when you get too many? Here comes Elliott in. Is that they fine you only about $100 a man. So, whoa! That was a close call with Benny Parsons and Bill Elliott in the pits. Typical NASCAR racing, very close stuff there. Don't think that the crewman, by the way, look at the man changing the rear tire. He will glance occasionally up the track. He's already done it once to make sure that some car isn't barreling down on him.
Bill Elliott had temporarily taken the lead when Earnhardt came in. Now he has surrendered it. For the moment, number 33, Harry Gant is the man on the lead, but Gant has not yet pitted, and he'll have to come in fairly shortly.
Look at Elliott get back up to speed, shooting by Richmond. Let's watch as Elliott comes into the pits. We see him here. Watch his man changing that rear tire. Whoops, here we go. All right, we're going to see him come in, which he came in awfully fast. And this is where he has that near miss with Benny Parsons. Watch this. Parsons is right now pulling out of his pit there, number 55. Bill Elliott pulls right in front of him, the kind of thing that causes bad accidents. And look at that.
And it looks slow on the screen because we're doing it there in slow motion. But these cars go from 0 to 60 in a hiccup, and that was quite a dangerous little brush there between Benny Parsons and Bill Elliott. There's Harry Gant, number 33, the leader. You see Elliott sneaking right back up on him as Elliott unlaps himself, having temporarily gone a lap down as a result of the pit stop. So when Harry Gant comes in, Elliott will be in good position to perhaps reassume the lead.
Of course, Elliott's car running exceptionally well now with those new tires on the outside. Anytime you can take on fresh tires, your car is bound to handle very well. They're cool. They give very good grip for at least 7-8 laps. That's one reason you see cars come out of the pit and seemingly shoot by the cars that were, you know, running at the last stage of their time before coming into the pit.
We are just about 100 miles into this 500-mile race. The leader for the moment is number 33, Harry Gant, driving a Chevrolet, a regular on the circuit since 1979. Harry Gant is 46 years old, labored for years. Finally got a breakthrough in 1984 and 1985 when he got the kind of equipment which made him a contender. Very quickly, let's go down to Al Trautwig.
Jim, I think we may have a media blackout in the Dale Earnhardt pits. I just went up to Kirk Shelmerdine and said, Kirk, what just happened? He said, we took a pit stop. I said, I know that. Did you run out of gas? He said, no. And off went Dale Earnhardt, and it looked as though he ran out of gas from down here. But we've been unable to confirm it. So back to you, hoping to raise the blackout.
Well, it would not be terribly surprising if the Earnhardt crew were getting a little bit sensitive about that particular issue. Certainly, they have not heard the last of it regarding the Daytona 500.
Well, exactly. But obviously, if it was a miscalculation, it was a small one. I don't think it's really hurt them that much. In this particular incident, what would make me concerned if I was their pit crew, and they really have run out of gas, is that they must be consuming more gas, by and large, than the other cars out there who were able to go further. We saw Elliott go around with no trouble and come in. We saw some of the other leaders able to keep going. That could be a severe tactical disadvantage later in the race, and that's something I'd be concerned about. It may be, as we see Harry Gant come into the pit here, that some of Earnhardt's speed, Jim, is a result of pulling what they call a tighter gear. He may be revving his engine up more, which is a reason that he would get worse gas mileage. Just a lot of supposition at this stage, but such are some of the elements of strategy that these crew chiefs have to play with as the race drags along.
Very quick pit stop for Gant, who is now out, and there's a look at number 47, Morgan Shepherd, who in Gant's pit stop has assumed the lead on the track. But again, Shepherd has not yet pitted, so he'll be going in very shortly. But for right now, Morgan Shepherd is the leader, a little bit beyond 1/5 of the way into the Atlanta 500 stock car race. Back at Atlanta International Raceway, the pit stop still continuing just past the 100-mile mark of this 500-mile Atlanta 500. And the leader for the moment is 29-year-old Rusty Wallace of Greensboro, North Carolina, who in 1980, driving a car outfitted by Roger Penske, finished a surprise second in this race, but then never really had a regular ride on the stock car racing circuit until 1984. For the moment, he is enjoying a brief visit to the sunlight. And there is number 15, Ricky Rudd. We are told that Wallace has come in for the pit stop. And so at the moment, officials here are identifying that man, Ricky Rudd, in a Ford as the leader in the race. Rudd out of Chesapeake, Virginia, the Rookie of the Year 8 years ago. Finished 4th here last year and is always in the hunt for top dollar in stock car racing as he has emerged in recent years to become a growing force. So it is Rudd, Gant, Tim Richmond, and number 9, Bill Elliott, the 4 leaders on lap 73 of 328 laps in this race.
Ricky Rudd is also a man with an inquiring mind, and he's become interested in aviation. He's a pilot, very good one, and he hopes in the next couple of weeks to make a landing on an aircraft carrier, an F-18, not as the pilot, but as a passenger. He's undergone some survival training. What would happen, in other words, if the plane didn't make it onto the deck of the carrier but went into the water? He's learned to swim with a pack and all this gear on without sinking. And he's a fascinating guy whose mind ranges well beyond racing into other areas.
Driving in a car outfitted by Bud Moore, who is one of the half dozen or so top car owners in the long history of the sport. And there's a look at Cale Yarborough picking his way through traffic. We remind you, we have 2 race cameras in 2 cars here. One of them, Jeff Bodine's car, number 5, and the other, as you can see there, in the cockpit of Cale Yarborough. There are actually 2 cameras, one which can face forward or backward or in any direction in the cockpit from behind Yarborough's shoulder, and that smaller camera, which you see faces directly up at Cale, to give us an idea of what the driver's doing.
All right, have a look there. Again, we were going to have a look at the windshield and see those bars, see them on the rear window there, that keep the glass, should it break or shatter in any way, falling in on the driver. Remember, the speeds here are enormous. The loading aerodynamically on that windshield is enormous. You see his range of instruments, the one with the red needle on it on the extreme left, just under his hand, is the tachometer, which is his indication of his relative speed at any given moment. Remember, these cars do not have speedometers in them. To the right of the tachometer, you see an instrument that is his oil pressure gauge. To the left, it's his water temperature gauge. Those are his 2 most critical gauges right by the tachometer. As we look to the right, the next gauge is the oil temperature, which shouldn't run more than 240. He's running cool right now, very cool. All his instruments look good. And the one that's flickering a little bit right there just off of his arm is the fuel pressure gauge, running looks like about 5 pounds. That's plenty. It's when it starts to really flicker and sweep up and down that you know you're in trouble. Right now, Cale Yarborough, all of his instrumentation looks very, very good. Looks like a busy man in that cockpit, though, doesn't he? He, too, has power steering. You see him going into turn 1. He has just lifted off a little, used the brake. Here's where he's trying to get back on the throttle. Right about here as he comes down, can you hear him start to pick it up a little as he sweeps back out toward the turn? By the way, Cale has the best batting average, so to speak, here in Atlanta of any driver. So here's a man psychologically very at home. And you see that undulating line on the inside. To a driver, that means everything. He's positioning his car relative to that line, and he knows within 6 inches whether he's got the car exactly where he wants it or not. 180 miles an hour there, and back to the leader, Ricky Rudd, with Ron Bouchard just outside of him there.
Yarborough is driving a Ford, as is Ricky Rudd, number 15, there on your screen. These cars are, as Sam Posey has already pointed out, dramatically different from the Fords, Chevrolets, Pontiacs, etc., which you would buy at your local car lot. In fact, so different that we've put together a small feature report on some of the differences you might be facing if you're looking for one of these Fords or Chevys.
Last year, Fords dominated most of the major speedways. At least one of the Fords dominated the big speedways, and that was Bill Elliott. Our cars ran awfully well. Not quite. We didn't have the success that he had, but we were able to win during 1985. 1986 looks like a little bit different deal. I think NASCAR came in and they looked at last year's season and they felt like they needed a rule change to try to get the General Motors more competitive on the big track. And I imagine it's a very difficult situation for them, you know, trying to find a fine line to make all the manufacturers happy. And last year it looked like Ford was going pretty good, and they made a rule change to allow the new body styles to be run this year. And now all of a sudden it looks like it swung the other way. It's gone 180 degrees the other direction. It looks like the GM cars now have the advantage. So I guess we'll just have to sit tight and hope that NASCAR tries to even things back up a little bit. And I imagine a lot of it will probably be determined at Atlanta this weekend, how the Fords shape up against the GM cars.
That manufacturer's confrontation was embodied early in the race, as you saw, between Dale Earnhardt and Bill Elliott, who was in second place. Earnhardt in a GM car, Elliott, who is, of course, the flagship car for Ford Motor Company. Right now, Ricky Rudd motors on in his Ford, and we'll be back. Back at the Atlanta International Raceway, where for the moment a yellow flag is out. You are looking at car number 4, Rick Wilson. Recently had a small tussle with the wall, and now Wilson is back out on the track, Sam Posey.
This is what you would call turn 4. It's the end of the second long turn. As you can see, he hits the wall reasonably hard, but I guess he doesn't hit it. He must have just grazed it. I was going to say that there's reinforcing tubes of steel behind those front bumpers, so you can actually hit the wall substantially and still be able to continue. Evidently, he didn't hit it at all. Terrific driving there.
He visited the pits briefly and then went back out onto the track. So there you can see Wilson in car number 4 as he continues on his way after that brief brush with danger here at the Atlanta International Raceway. We are just past 100 miles into a 500-mile race, Sam. Let me suggest that maybe 2 significant things have happened so far. Number 1, in the early laps, Dale Earnhardt seemed to prove what everyone suspected, which was that his car is superior for the moment on this track. Number 2, if we get our guess right, he ran out of gas again.
Yeah, and it sets up 2 stories that I think we're going to see unfold in the next hour or so, which is Earnhardt trying to make up the lost ground, and the Ford story. I mean, Ford is suddenly, it would seem, not dominating the event, but very much back in the hunt. In the form of Bill Elliott, Ricky Rudd, a couple of the other guys. They are starting to run well, so maybe there's a little more parity in the rules than I imagined.
All right, and while we are watching the cars run under the yellow and therefore in fixed position, let's take a look at some of the problems you might face if you tried to buy one of these cars.
Hi, I'm Honest Johnny. You can trust me. Howdy! Welcome to Honest Johnny's previously owned automobiles. I'm Honest Johnny, and you are?
Sam Posey, and
this lovely lady is your sister.
actually, that's my grandmother. You see, I just recently bought this 1986 Pontiac 2+2, and she'd like to have one exactly like it to drive to church on Sunday. Trouble is, we can't afford another new car. We'd like a used one. Do you have one like it?
Honest Johnny has the finest selection of quality low-mileage discount cars anywhere. In fact, right here, Mr. Posey, a 1986 Pontiac 2+2 at rock-bottom prices.
$85,000. Honest, Johnny, we can't afford to buy this car.
You can't afford not to buy this car. Consider some of the features on this fine automobile. Features you may not have to enjoy on your own car, Mr. Posey.
Ah, Grandma.
Ain't no doors to fuss with. These are welded shut, can't fly open by accident.
How's she run, Honest Johnny?
This fine car can attain speeds up to 200 miles per hour.
200 miles an hour? She only needs to drive it to church.
But you don't want her to be late now, do you, Mr. Posey? Of course not. Now, with this 650 horsepower engine...
650 horsepower. I bet it doesn't get very good mileage.
Mileage? 4 miles to the gallon. But you don't have to worry about that. With a good pit crew, you can fill her up in under 14 seconds. Trust me.
It doesn't look very safe.
Safe? Just look at that roll bar over there and all this seatbelt stuff, just like in an airplane. Go ahead, put it on. And you know what else? The gas tank has a lining of thick rubber so that no matter how hard you crash this thing, the tank won't split open and cause a messy fire.
The seat looks...
Orthopedic. Orthopedic, that's right, Mr. Posey. And this baby don't need no key. It starts with this switch here, see? And with no side windows, you've got our all-natural 2+200 ventilating system. 2 open windows, 200 miles an hour. Hey, disc brakes, 4 on the floor, 2-tone paint job. Matches her eyes.
I like it, Sammy.
Ain't no muffler to rust out neither.
Oh, Grandma!
Now, Mr. Posey, Sam, I'll call you Sam. Sam, let me tell you about our finances.
Look, Jim, there's Grandma now. I think she's been doing pretty well in the race so far.
Yeah, and let me tell you about their financing.
Yeah, of course, that's Ron Bouchard, and we really thank him and his team for lending us the car. You know, it points up, I think, the fact, as we see Tim Richmond, the leader under yellow, that one of the reasons NASCAR has been so successful through the years is that people really are willing almost to believe that the stock car is similar to the street car, while in fact they are not similar at all.
One of the noteworthy characteristics of stock car racing, they bunch up under the yellow flag. So we will have a whole new competition when we come back. At a 500 live, we remain under the yellow flag. You can see that we are on lap 92 of 328, so that we are well more than a quarter into the race. Tim Richmond is listed as the leader for the moment, with Benny Parsons in second place. There is apparently some discussion of the scoring going on right now, but for the time being, Richmond is the first place driver, Benny Parsons in second place, Cale Yarborough third. Now let's take a look at what is happening in the NCAA basketball tournament. You can see that Alabama has shaded Illinois in the big upset already today. Navy beat Syracuse in the Carrier Dome in Syracuse, and David Robinson, the brilliant Navy center, regarded by some as the best pivot man in the country, 35 points, 9 rebounds, 8 blocked shots. Out of the race so far here in Atlanta, Pancho Carter, last year's Indy 500 pole sitter, out on lap 26 with an engine problem. Joe Ruttman, another USAC driver in the past, in his background, out on lap 40. Phil Parsons, whose father, Benny Parsons, is now in second place, ran over an air hose on lap 53, and Jimmy Means is out as of lap 87 after having briefly touched the wall.
Let's think about what this yellow and when it came out means to the structure of the race. It was obviously a great break for Dale Earnhardt, because he is now only a little bit behind the actual leader, and when he is able to unleash that superior speed, if he still has it after his pit stop, the job of closing up on the leader will be easier than it was. Cale Yarborough has benefited considerably also. He was further back by far than this, and he, after the pit stop, had seemed to get going. So we may see Cale coming very much to the fore, and will of course be riding with him. Tim Richmond is getting a chance to rest, which is very important for him because he's driving injured. At Daytona, in one of the qualifying races, you see Richmond there right behind the pace car. He hurt his neck and back very badly, and he has not returned to full fitness yet.
And he has one of the most varied backgrounds in the race, Sam. You know, he was Indianapolis 500 Rookie of the Year back in 1980 before moving into NASCAR racing. And he told us a little earlier about the inferiority complex he experienced in first moving to this form of racing.
Well, I came from sprint cars and super modifieds, Indianapolis cars, then to stock cars, and it was, you know, it was an adjustment that I did think was inferior to actors, to a lot of people. It almost, you know, I don't want the people of my sport or our sport to take this wrong, but I did feel a little inferior, or maybe a little embarrassed. Why, I don't know.
Okay.
That was my problem and not everybody else's, and now it's just the other way. You know, I'm not better than anybody else, but I darn sure do something that's all right, that I feel is okay in my book, and I hope it's okay in everybody else's, because driving a Chevrolet with Folgers coffee on the side of it and Exxon motor oil, and those aren't plugs, but that's America, you know. That is, you know, and I'm an American racing in America. You know, that is cool. That's 200-mile-an-hour knee, you know.
And they are still under the yellow flag as the man who is cool, Tim Richmond, remains in first place. Now there, lurking close to the lead, is Cale Yarborough, and during yellow flags, when given permission, Sam Posey has the option of talking to a driver in that situation. Sam, let's see if you can get through to Cale.
Cale, this is Sam Posey. Can you hear me? Cale, this is Sam Posey. Can you hear me? Well, we can hear his engine sound up here, and I see that he is trying to talk to us. But unfortunately, Cale, we are not hearing you. We'll work on that, and meantime, wish you good luck. Obviously, you've come well up from the starting position, and things are looking good.
All right, we will try to get back to Cale Yarborough later, if the mechanics of this situation allow us the opportunity to talk to him. the man from Sardis, South Carolina, known by some to be from Timminsville, South Carolina, but he actually lives in Sardis. Third place on the all-time list with 50 super speedway wins. And he has been, Sam Posey, the leading money winner in the history of this particular racetrack, having started 40 races here and having won 7 of them. A lot of people whom you spoke to here within the past few days figured that, particularly with the lack of practice time occasioned by the rain, Cale Yarborough would be one to watch in this race. Right now, Yarborough remains lurking near the lead under the yellow flag. Tim Richmond still in front. We'll be back with more exclusive coverage after this word from our